All right, let's jump right in. If you're building SwiftUI apps, you know gut state. Of course you do. But what happens when your projects start to get bigger? More screens, more data, more everything. Those simple tools just don't cut it anymore. Today, we're leveling up. We're going to unpack the state management strategies you absolutely need to build rock-solid professional apps.
So, does this sound familiar? You've built a few screens, you're passing some data around, and then it all just gets a little weird, right? The UI doesn't update when it should, or maybe different screens are showing completely different information. Here's the thing. You didn't do anything wrong. It just means your app has officially outgrown the basic tools. It's a good problem to have.
And here's our game plan to get you through it. First, we're going to diagnose exactly why those simple apps start to break. Then, we'll open up our state management toolbox, the essential tools SwiftUI gives us. We'll nail down the most critical distinction, local versus shared data. Then, we'll get into the golden rule for stable apps, the single source of truth. And finally, we'll take all that theory and use it to fix the most common state bugs you're going to see out there. Okay, section 1, when simple apps break. This is all about those growing pains. That moment when your cool little prototype starts turning into a real, live, multi-screen app. So what really kicks off the chaos? Well, it's these things right here. It's when you have multiple screens that all need to see and maybe even change the same piece of data. It's when your views are nested inside other views, which are nested inside other views. And it's definitely when you have data that needs to stick around, like a user's login status or their settings. This is exactly where a simple @state variable just starts to fall apart. And the symptoms are always the same, aren't they? You tap a like button and the little heart icon just stares back at you unchanged, or you add something to your cart on one screen, you go to checkout, and poof, the cart is empty. You start realizing you've got 2, maybe 3 different copies of the user's info floating around your app. It all just adds up to unpredictable behavior that is an absolute nightmare to debug. So let's talk solutions. Section 2, your state management toolbox. The great news is that SwiftUI gives us everything we need to fix this. The trick is to stop thinking of these as just a random list of commands and start seeing them as a specialized toolbox. Each tool is designed for a very specific job. First up, the one you already know and love, @state. Think of this as your hammer. It's essential, but you wouldn't build a whole house with just a hammer, right? @state is for data that is owned by and private to a single view. Is a toggle on or off? What's the text in a search field? That data lives and dies with that one view. That's the perfect job for @state. Next up is @binding. So if @state is the actual piece of data, @binding is like handing the keys to a child view. You're not making a copy of the car, you're giving the child permission to drive the original. This creates a live, two-way connection so a subview, like a custom toggle button, can directly change the @state that its parent owns. It's absolutely crucial for making reusable components. Now we get to the heavy hitters. @observable is how you graduate to managing shared data. You use this to create a class, like a central data store, that holds information needed all over your app. Think about a user's profile, the items in a shopping cart, or the settings screen. This is the brain for all your app's shared information. Okay, so if @observable creates the brain, how does every other part of your app get access to it? That's what @environment is for. Think of it like a super clean, super efficient delivery system. You put your shared object into the app's environment one time at the very top, and then any view, no matter how deep it is, can just reach out and grab it. This completely gets rid of having to pass data down through 5 or 6 layers of views. It's a game changer. And all this brings us to the most important mental model you need, Section 3, local versus shared data. Honestly, once you nail this concept, about 90% of your state management decisions are going to make themselves. It all comes down to asking one simple question. And this slide is the cheat sheet. For any piece of data in your app, just ask yourself, how many views need this? If the answer is just this one view, or maybe this one view and its direct child, then you are dealing with local state. Your tools are @state and @binding. That's it. But if the answer is a bunch of different unrelated views all over the app, now you're talking about shared app state. And that is always, always a job for @observable and @environment. Getting this right is everything. Getting that distinction right leads us directly to a much bigger idea. Section 4, the single source of truth. This isn't just a coding technique. This is the core architectural principle behind every single stable and predictable app you've ever used. And this right here perfectly illustrates the problem it solves. The classic mistake, right? You create an @state variable for your product list on the main store screen, and then you go to the checkout screen and you create another @state variable for that same list. You now have two separate, competing versions of reality in your app. When the user changes one, the other one knows nothing about it. It's a guaranteed recipe for bugs. The principle of a single source of truth is actually really simple. It just means that any piece of shared data in your app has to live in exactly one place, one and only one. Your entire user interface then just becomes a reflection of that single source. And this makes it literally impossible for your app to show you inconsistent data because there's only one version of the truth to show. And making this happen is just a straightforward 3-step recipe. Step 1, you create a class for your shared data and you mark it with @observable. Step 2, in your main app file, the very top of your app, you create an instance of that store one time and inject it into the environment. Step 3, now in any view, anywhere that needs that data, you just use the @environment property wrapper to grab it. That's the whole pattern right there. Okay, let's get really practical. Section 5, fixing common state bugs. We're going to look at two classic mistakes. You could call them code smells, and use our new principles to find the clean, best practice solution for each one. So mistake number 1, a view is holding on to data it has no business owning. You see a view and it's got an @state variable for something that is clearly shared data, like the user's list of favorite items. You have to stop and remember our rule. @state means private data for this one view. The second another screen needs that same list, @state is the wrong tool. And the fix is, well, it's exactly the pattern we just learned. You refactor. You lift that state up and out of the individual view, you put it inside a shared @observable object, and you provide that object to the entire app through the environment. Boom. Now you have one source of truth that any view can look at and trust. All right, here's another big one. You open a file, you look at a view, and you just see @app binding, @app binding, @app binding. 5, 6, 7 of them? That is a huge red flag. It's a sign of this view is trying to do way too much, and it's tangled up with its parent in a really fragile, messy way. It's just a nightmare to manage. The modern, much cleaner fix is to simplify. Instead of trying to thread a dozen individual wires through your view hierarchy, just pass the whole object. So if a view needs user settings, don't pass separate bindings for the username, the theme, and notification preferences. No way. Just pass it the whole user settings object and let the view pick out the properties it needs. It's cleaner, it's more scalable, and it's way easier to maintain. So here's the real takeaway. Having a clear state strategy isn't just some academic thing. When you really master the difference between local and shared data, and you commit to that single source of truth, you just eliminate an entire class of bugs. Your app becomes stable and predictable. And that lets you build new features with confidence instead of always being afraid you're going to break something. And that leaves us with one last powerful question to take back to your own code. Right now, open up your current project. Think about the most important piece of shared data in that app, the user account, the shopping cart, whatever it is. Can you point to the one single place where that data lives? If the answer is yes, you are well on your way to building truly professional apps. And if the answer is no, or maybe, it's complicated, well, you now have the exact blueprint to fix it.